Welcome to Boxing During Dinner. This is the dessert portion of Boxing During Dinner. We just finished talking a lot about Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather in our last episode. So now we're going to talk about other things in the world of boxing. We needed to talk about this Devin Haney um, Linares fight, Jorge Linares. But I'm still waiting for my tikka masala. I don't know what's taking so long, but so in the meantime, I'm having a beer because it's Kronenberg. It's French beer. It's really good.
Man,
I'm a
well, if
fan.
this is the
I was gonna say, I remember telling Victor like a few months ago. I'm like, man, you know what? Like lately, I've been getting home after showings, and I just want to be home and have a beer. And he's like, dude, you're becoming like my dad.
That's the old man status right there, bro.
It's like those progressive commercials, like "Don't become your parents." Like I feel
oh
like
yeah,
even though my dad didn't drink beer, but I feel like I'm becoming Victor's dad. So I'm becoming
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. Yeah, I haven't had a beer in probably 2 or 3 years actually.
Wow,
Nice. I don't drink beer, so
Yeah,
nice.
I just drink water out of my Detroit Lions cup, which is probably usually filled with my own tears. But the conversation for another day.
And Victor, what's your drink of choice?
I like whiskey.
Yep.
I like double black, blue label if I can afford it.
Nice. It's better just to
On
pay
those
the
special
bottle
occasions.
and take it in your pocket, because if you do that at a club, you're gonna get charged way too much.
Especially
too
in
much.
Miami.
But we have good news. Jim Lampley is back. Jim Lampley is back.
Awesome.
The sad part about it is that we're not gonna hear Jim from Harold
From
Letterman,
Larry.
but we'll hear it in our hearts. Every time Jim says, "Hey, Mike Coppinger, what's your scorecard?" Or I don't know if Mike Coppinger's doing I know he's doing interviews. I don't know if he's scoring the fight, but we'll definitely think of Harold Letterman
We will.
as we always do. But we need to talk about this Devin Haney fight because it created a lot of talk after the fight. Victor last week said Devin Haney is the lesser of the 135-pound champions. Victor may be onto something because Devin Haney chose to be brave. He chose to exchange punches with Jorge Linares. This broadcast was a little bit all over the place. As you know, I'm not the biggest fan of the zone broadcast. I know they try. I'm not going to knock anyone because I come from the broadcast world. So does Victor. David, you've been part of the broadcast world as well. And you know, people work hard to do what they do. But when you throw a comment like Jorge Linares has only been knocked out when it's been a war of attrition, when it's been in the later rounds, what the hell happened against Pablo Cesar Cano? What the hell happened against against Yayo Thompson? War of attrition? No. The dude has been known to get knocked out. What we learned in this fight is that Devin Haney cannot punch. Devin Haney will not knock out any of the top contenders at 135, and that's okay. One of my favorite fighters of all time, actually not one of my favorite fighter of all time is Pernell Whitaker.
Pernell Whitaker.
And I always got to mention, David gave me probably the best gift I've ever received in my life, a signed Pernell Whitaker glove. Amazing. And I have it there in full display. I don't care if, Anna, my wife, wants me to put it away in the closet. No, it's it's there for people to see. That's that was Pernell Whitaker. Pernell Whitaker, towards the latter stage of his career, wouldn't knock anybody out. He knocked out Juan Nazario, and then who the hell did he knock out? And that's fine. Devin Haney needs to be that guy. Devin Haney needs to be the boxer who makes it boring. He could box. He has a hell of a jab, has a lot of skills. You don't need to do something that's out of your comfort zone, man. Like, I know you were trying. Oh, man, the haters were saying that I was boring, so I exchanged. Why? You could have easily beat Jorge Linares through 12 rounds, just jab, get away. Instead, you exchanged punches. You got hurt, which is fine. You got hurt because champions have been knocked out in the past. And then in the 12th round, he was doing a running hug, which looked very bad. It looked terrible. So it's a learning experience for a young fighter. I'm glad it happened to him. But then you start going to what Victor said, right? You start going and you're okay. How would he do against Lomachenko? How would he do against Shakur Stevenson if he goes up? How would he do against Gervonta, against Ryan Garcia? Luke Campbell went after him today. Luke Campbell said, if I would have caught you with that shot that I hit Ryan Garcia with, I would have knocked you out.
And I agree. Because I still don't know how Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia does not know how he got up from that shot, because I've had these conversations with Ryan. We spoke about it at length while he was at the Canelo bubble here in Miami. Great relationship with Ryan. Wish him all the best. I asked him, Ryan, I was literally almost in tears because I didn't know how you were going to get up. You felt really awkward. He goes, yeah. And in typical Ryan form, he's like, yeah, bro, I was worried. I don't know how I got up. And that's the stuff you love about Ryan. But Devin Haney, I don't think Devin gets up. In addition to that, I do give him credit. We saw a different Devin Haney who did exactly what we wanted. He exchanged, but then you ran for the final 3 rounds. And I give you credit for surviving, getting out of the fight, and winning. But a prime Jorge Linares, Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, do we even mention Gervonta Davis? Lomachenko? No, man. And look, it's no knock on Devin Haney. I like Devin Haney. I think he has a ton of things that he does well, but you're just in a class. Look, people like to criticize that Canelo just doesn't have a rival. Maybe Devin Haney has one too many because it's a loaded class. It's typical to the welterweight division and Danny Garcia. You know, Danny Garcia is at the bottom of that welterweight totem pole, and maybe that's why he's moving up to 154. But Devin Haney at 135, and if you only continue to go up to 140 as the plan is, I don't like the way that bowls out for him.
And David, it's okay because there's a lot of good fighters, right, in both divisions. But David, I wanted to throw this at you because in our Boxing During Dinner chat on WhatsApp, I did throw this at you, and you commented, right? Somebody tweeted, Haney's answer to my other question was spot on. We have never seen any fighter run up rounds on Linares, not even Loma, who rallied from a knockdown to stop Linares in the 10th. At the time of the stoppage, Loma was up on one card, Linares on the other, and even on one. And I said, this argument is fine, sure, but an older Linares who was knocked out by Loma and then Cano, imagine this argument when thinking about an older Ali versus Larry Holmes. We have never seen any fighter run up rounds on Ali, not even Frazier, who had to go through hell in 3 fights and only won once. So how the F are you going to talk about a fight against Lomachenko, the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world at the time, 3 years ago when Linares was still, like, you know, closer.
He was a unified champion.
He was a champion, and you know, and did fight well against Loma, did knock him down, but got knocked out eventually. How are you gonna say, oh no, Devin Haney's right because 3 years later, it's 3 years later, bro.
After 2 knockouts. So, you know, my commentary on Devin Haney is a little bit different. I do agree on everything you said. I think credit is due for him, you know, fighting through it and doing the things that we said he wouldn't do, or, you know, whatever, or whoever they are that said he wouldn't do it. But my biggest beef with Devin Haney is he is a fighter who I don't think is confident in who he is. He might be the most talented fighter in the weight class. The dilemma, and oddly enough, I'm not saying they're the same fighter, but he reminds me a lot of the guy he just fought, of somebody who has all of the tools in the shed, but for whatever reason is not able to put them together in all the ways. He loses focus. He falls apart when it matters. That is the thing, especially at the peak of these divisions, where you separate the elite from the guys who are pretty close to elite. Devin Haney has all of the tools, but you can tell that he's a guy who did want to his credit, you could tell he wanted to exchange. He wanted to prove something that the other guys said he didn't have. Well, guess what? There are some things Devin Haney doesn't have. His chin might be one of those things. His ability to get in there and trade with certain guys might be one of those things. Victor made a great point earlier. You could argue that Devin Haney has one of the 3 best jabs in all of boxing. An incredible tool that was giving him the distance and the space that he needed to clearly win rounds against Jorge Linares for most of the fight. And then when he got away from the things that were working for him, you started to see things fall apart. You started to see vulnerabilities. If I'm Devin Haney, I don't give a shit what anyone says about what I'm deficient in. What I do care about is that my jab is better than yours, and I'm going to bury you with it all night until you can do something about it. It's cruel, it's cold, it's efficient, but it wins fights. Devin Haney can beat all of the guys in the weight class, I think, if he stays disciplined and decides to be okay with who he is and stops trying to be somebody he's not.
And David, you just reminded me of something. And one of the fighters that I like the most, both in his career and personally, is Lennox Lewis. You want
the pugilist specialist.
You want to be bored to tears? Watch Lennox Lewis's fight against David Tua. Like, you will be bored to tears. But he understood David Tua is a shorter guy who could punch, and if he catches me on the chin, He's gonna knock me the fuck out. So Lennox Lewis, jab, 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 jab. The entire freaking fight, jab, 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 made it boring. Won the fight. Lennox Lewis had a lot of fights like that. The
Mhm.
Klitschko's had a lot of fights like that. They knew their deficiencies and they clearly understood what they're good at. Nobody's gonna confuse Bernard Hopkins with being one of the most exciting fighters in the world. Bernard Hopkins had a way to beat you. He would jab, come in close, hold you, hit you around. Like he had every veteran trick in the book, and he would then eventually in the later rounds he would kick your ass. But Devin Haney, David, I agree with you 100% on both things you said. One of them was the Linares comparison because yes, the first time I ever watched Jorge Linares fight, I thought to myself, this could be one of the greatest fighters of all time. He had every tool in his arsenal. Like I said last week to Victor, I'm like, he was one of the prettiest fighters I had seen, and not because of his looks, because of the way he fought. He would come in, jab, move around, quick hands. I mean, they called him El Niño de Oro. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy was excellent, excellent, but there was something about him that was just missing, and he got exposed for it. Devin Haney may be the same, but I agree with David Victor. He needs to understand the jab is his number one weapon and just use the hell out of it. Who cares if you beat Teofimo Lopez and you win a unanimous decision over 12 because you jabbed the crap out of him for 12 rounds? Who gives a crap if it was
You won
exciting
the
or not,
fight.
or if
You won
somebody
the
was
fight.
bored?
Yeah.
David said something that really caught my attention was when Devin Haney isn't confident in some of his own skills. That's what it looks like. And he proved that after the fight, not during the fight, after the fight, when Jorge Linares walks into his locker room and he's asking Jorge, did you feel my power? Did you like my approach at the beginning? Yeah, I knew that's how you were going to come. So I was going to be the attacker at first. He's asking his opponent, did you feel my pop? Did you see how I walked you down? Like if you need the approval of the guy that you just beat, it's hard to fathom thinking a fighter's insecure, but Devin Haney seems to be insecure in some of his skills. And I would have been more impressed if he walked Jorge Linares down for 12 rounds and, as you said, cruised to a unanimous decision, than trying to exchange and then having to hold on for dear life the final 3 rounds. That's where the criticism comes in, because how many times have we mentioned it on all the podcasts we've done? Nobody cared for Pretty Boy Floyd when Pretty Boy Floyd was knocking guys out. I believe it was 13 of the first 15 fights were by knockout. No one paid attention to that. But what made Money Mayweather into the cash cow he is was winning by decision. If that's who you're going to be, so be it. You're still winning. Who are you trying to prove? What are you trying to prove? And that's my issue with Devin Haney. I just don't understand what he's doing. So if you could beat a guy by walking him down for 12 rounds, do so. But don't get into this battle with, especially with Jorge Linares, out of all people, who dropped Lomachenko, who could put some people on the ground. What was that about? You were cruising to a win. So what? What would they have said? Oh, another unanimous decision by Devin Haney. He's a great boxer. Okay, now there's question marks on your chin, on your holding, on can you go 12 rounds with a pure puncher? I think you left more question marks than you answered questions.
Agreed. And the fight was there for him, to your point, to cruise the rest of the way, keep that jab on him. And Jorge Linares, then I would have agreed, would have never been beaten so soundly in his career. Even in the later stages, fair enough that, he took some losses, but even still, I mean, you saw what Linares had left. But if he kept that jab on him all through the rest of the fight, I mean, it would have been a sound beat.
David, what if the bell doesn't ring? What if the bell doesn't ring? What if there's another 15 seconds in that fight?
Right.
In that round, I should say.
Well, keep in mind too, we all know that in the unified, boxing rules, that the ref has the right to stop the fight at any time, even necessarily. And correct me if I'm wrong, but right, like even though the round ended, we've seen fights get stopped between rounds and things like that. The ref realistically could have looked at Devin Haney and said, he's concussed, he's not fit to continue. And frankly, that argument could have been made because when he did come out for the following round, he still didn't have his feet for most of that round. So, I agree. Yeah, you're right. What if the round had gone on longer? But what if the ref had done something that maybe was prudent and stopped the fight anyway? Those are still pending questions. Now, granted, as they always say, if grandma had balls, she'd be grandpa. It didn't happen. But nevertheless, is that not a phrase we use? But nevertheless, it happened. I think the world of Devin Haney's potential, but to your point, Victor, he left a lot more questions than he answered. And if he can really become comfortable in who he is, I still think the sky's the limit for him. But that has to happen. We talked about Ryan Garcia, who is a very imperfect fighter, a very flawed fighter, but he knows who he is. He's always going to be in there in the pocket throwing, and his opponents know what they're going to get to. And you have to be able to be very comfortable in who you are, because as we talked about, the difference between the guys who are at the peak of their performance and those who aren't is that extra set of belief when you are in round 10 or in round 11 against a guy who's probably as good as you need that little bit of difference. And if Devin Haney has to ask himself questions of that against Jorge Linares at this stage in his career, then what will happen if he has to answer that same question against Teofimo Lopez or any of the other guys that you mentioned? And I don't think he's prepared to answer them right now.
I love that somebody drove by David's block here, hearing some house music.
Yeah, you would think I live in a fair area.
If you guys watched the Haney Linares preview last week, we mentioned that we gave David the night off because he needed to rest. He's about to become a dad, which we're very happy about. I can't wait until he joins the dad club. But David, something that Victor and I spoke about last week was that we have these lightweights fighting week after week after week. And I'm going to throw in Shakur Stevenson there. He's fighting at 130 pounds, but I'm going to throw him in there. So we're gonna grade them. We're gonna give them, we have report cards, right? So that said, David, Devin Haney, his performance, what did you give him?
I give him a C. I think he showed some things. I think he showed some things, right? If you grade him on the first half of the fight, I give him an A. It was boring, but it was efficient. Second half of the fight, he fell out of it. I feel like maybe I'm repeating myself at this point, but that's I think that's a fair score, right? It's a passing grade. He passed. But he left a lot to be desired, and it's probably better for him to learn a lesson like this at this point in a fight that he did win than later on when he's iced by a guy who is really in the top 3 to 5 of the division, and then wondering, well, shoot, where are my belts? He can figure it out, but I give him a C.
David, what was Gordon rule? C plus?
Oh man, I don't even remember.
I'll give him a C plus then.
C plus, fair enough.
So he can pass Gordon rule and he doesn't have to take finite math again like I did. But but yeah, I give him a C plus for the same reasons David did. First half of the fight, outstanding. Second half of the fight left much to be desired. But I think it's learning. Look, Floyd Mayweather spoiled the crap out of everybody. That whole, the O. Mayweather, Joe Calzaghe, Rocky Marciano, mention a few others that have retired with O's, right? I forgot who else retired with an O. Maybe Dimitri Pirogue, right? Because he had to retire because of an injury. But not a lot of people do that. So this whole notion of that people cannot lose. Some of our favorite fighters lost. Ali lost. Sugar Ray Robinson lost multiple times. Everybody lost. Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler fought each other 7 times. Back then, there wasn't that notion of, you can't lose, Leonard knocked out Tommy Hearns. Was Tommy Hearns a bum? No, he came back. He won titles. Then he lost to Marvin Hagler. Was he a bum after that? No. Then he won another title. He got knocked out by Iran Barkley. Was he a bum after that? No, he beat Virgil Hill at 175. So a loss isn't the end of somebody's career. A bad performance isn't the end of somebody's career. I think it's a learning experience and you move on, Victor. So what did you give him?
Man, I'm the most critical one when it comes to Devin Haney, and I was giving him a B minus. Jeez, you guys killed me with the C, bro.
Tough grader, I guess. I don't know.
That's nuts, man.
Maybe it comes down to expectation. Maybe if
dude, I'm glad you guys went with the C because I was already thinking, man, these guys are gonna be like B plus, A minus, and here I come. You guys come with the C, and I'm here with a B minus. I like him as a boxer, and he does things well. And if it wasn't for just those last 3 rounds, I think we would have been having a different conversation. I would still, I'm gonna sit on that one, saying that he is at best the 4th best 135 pounder. So I'll stick to that. But I think we would have been okay if he could just outbox these guys. I don't think he could do that now. So it's a B minus, and maybe it's a friendly grade. But as I said, there's a lot of question marks coming out of the Linares fight because with what I just mentioned, if he does cruise, if he does walk him down, it's a 12-round unanimous decision, boring fight, but it's Devin Haney. Then you start to think what Armando was saying, Lennox Lewis type. Okay, this guy's boring, but he's going to rack up wins, and you're going to have no choice but to fight him because he's going to have the belts. It's going to be the mandatory. Not so much. No, not anymore. Now I think Ryan Garcia, if Ryan Garcia catches him, I think he's going to floor him. And I think Ryan Garcia can get up from a Devin Haney punch. Teofimo Lopez, Teofimo's a killer.
Will he even be knocked down by a Devin Haney punch? That's
the other thing. Who outside of Antonio Moran gets knocked out? Well, I mean, there's other knockouts on the record, but
who did Antonio Moran beat on Boxeo Telemundo? So that guy. That guy gets knocked out.
He fought to a draw with Yomar Alamo.
Wait, I'm trying to look into the distance. Wait,
yeah.
That's West, right? I see Alex Sanchez telling us to wrap up.
That's a good call. That's very smart. I like how you did that.
Alex, wrap up. Okay, so yeah, we need to wrap up here on Boxing During Dinner, but lightweight division, man, it's hot. In a couple of weeks, we're gonna be at this fight, Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos Jr. We have Willie Monroe on the card.
Meek Mill's performing. I'm all excited about seeing Meek Mill live.
I want to say love to Willie Monroe Jr. from Rochester, New York, fighting in Miami. This guy was kind enough. I just have to say this real quick. My friends and I rented a party bus a few years ago around Christmas, and we just went around listening to rap music, drinking Hennessy. And Willie Monroe and his wife came on the bus and visited us because I invited him, and he just stuck around for a couple songs. We dropped him back off. Willie Monroe's a real one. I love that dude.
Damn. So Willie Monroe being from Rochester and being Cuban
and fighting in Miami.
That's like David Cordova's favorite fighter.
You guys are gonna get to see Aaron Aponte out of Hialeah in person. I really like
very good fighter.
Man. Yes, I really like that kid. Made his debut on Boxeo Telemundo, won in 54 seconds. Fought on the undercard of Canelo. Fought again on the undercard of Demetrius Andrade here in Hollywood, Florida, and now will be on. He's supposed to open up the pay-per-view portion of that Triller on June 19th. That Triller card. So really looking forward to seeing him out of Hialeah Gardens and 3-0 with one knockout. So let's see what.
We're not gonna have. I mean, he's not from Little Havana or Hialeah, but Mike the Bounty Hunter's son, Mike Hunter, he's gonna be on the card as well, and he's calling.
It's a fun card, man.
He's calling a fun card. Out, so that's good. I mean, wasn't he calling out? Wasn't he calling out one of the Paul brothers too?
I think everybody is because they all know how much they're getting paid.
I think they all are. But yeah, so we have lots of coverage of these fights coming up, and this has been Boxing During Dinner. I'm still waiting for my tikka masala. I don't know where it is.